before the video starts, I just want to say that there is some sort of disturbing content in this video, or at least it sort of talk about some more like sexual and gory-ish stuff. Like I don't really show much, but I just want to say quickly before the video starts, if anyone doesn't really want to like hear about weird sexualized and I think slightly gory stuff, like there isn't much gore, but there's still like a little bit and just weird sexualized stuff, and you may not want to entirely watch this video, but watch one of my other videos if you know. Well, anyways, onto the video. I'm assuming that a majority of people have heard of brain rot, at least in the modern context, which is basically just sort of all of this like content that is being fed towards the most recent generation, Generation Alpha, and is just sort of this general term for all the sort of content farmy stuff that's sort of getting sort of fed and forced to them and stuff. And well, I don't directly watch most of it, but every once in a while I'll just sort of see these like crazy thumbnails. And more recently, I've been realizing that they've kind of been getting more like sexual and stuff. Like they've sort of been like, I don't know, they just feel really odd, and it's been a like when I've seen the thumbnails, it's mainly been like just like a couple of characters, a couple of like brain rot characters. Like some of them they aren't as used as much, but like the main ones that I've seen is like this brain rot character, or I don't even know what it is, but like this brain rot like show thing, I think. But it goes by the name of Sprunki, and then there's also some more recent ones of Sonic the Hedgehog, and I think the Sonic ones might be more because of like the Sonic 3 movie that recently came out, so it might just be sort of trying to gear towards the audience of the Sonic 3 movie, but it just really feels really odd to see like all of these sort of childish characters just start doing all these like really, I don't know, just really odd stuff on YouTube. And so I just got sort of curious about like what are like the main like YouTube channels that are sort of like gearing towards these kids in these like really odd feeling ways. Like I understand that they're like content farms and all that stuff, but I was just really curious about like the specific channels and like what the specific channels are doing. And so that's when I brought my I guess you call it research up to this one channel called Anat Tunes. And the most notable thing about Anat Tunes that I noticed was like to begin with, I noticed that it had like half a dozen live streams going off at one time, and that feels really odd for one channel to have like six different live streams all at once, and it was all like the exact same content, and it was going on for like hours and stuff, and it seems like it had done this like a couple of times before, and then I also noticed that all of the live streams that were currently going used like different languages. I'm not entirely sure about all of the languages, but I noticed that there were like a couple of languages, and some of them just sort of were featured more often, other than English. And then all the past live streams seem to all like use English, at least in the title. And it just seemed really odd to just sort of seemingly like change the language used in the title. And so it got me thinking, why would this channel change the language that it used for the live streams, or at least the titles of live streams, into like English basically? Like it used like all these different languages, or I think it was only like two different languages, but still, it just felt really odd. And so I decided to actually watch one of the live streams, and I realized that all of it was in English. Like none of it was in like the other language that was featured in the title. And so it made me realize that they were probably trying to gear these videos more towards English speaking audiences. It's probably just that they originally had like these different languages like used at the beginning of the process to like publish the videos rather than to actually like market the videos. So they changed all of these like videos and their titles, and they used English in the videos just to gear towards English speaking like children and stuff. Uh, which I don't know. I just found it really interesting, like just sort of the multitude of languages that were used, but it was all still geared towards English-speaking children, and I do imagine that's likely to sort of face towards like American audiences, because I feel like American children are more sort of desensitized to this more sort of brain rot stuff, and they're sort of normally the most focused of marketing strategies due to their sort of lack of like control or lack of parental control over their internet use, and that's the reason I came up with. I'm not entirely sure if there's like just some other stuff, but I just think it's probably because American audiences are easier. But this brings me to another channel I found that also features this sort of brain rot, like weird brain rot sex stuff. This other channel I'm talking about is called Bunny Tunes. And I mean, like the original channel, it's kind of like all this like weird, like sprunky sex content and stuff. And I mean, that's weird and all, but just the amount of subscriptions that they had public, and it was like all to like all these other channels that basically did the exact same stuff. And it just felt really odd to have one sprunky sex channel like subscribe to all of its basically just all of its like enemies, sort of, or how I saw it as enemies, just sort of all the other content that basically produces the same stuff, lowering their market value. And so it just felt really odd to have this one channel subscribe to all these other channels. And then I realized all those channels were also subscribed to all these other channels. And I just realized there was this big, like, heaping, like, I don't know, just like mass of, like, sprunky sex content. And it was mainly Sprunki. Like I think there might have been like one or two videos about other things, but it was primarily just Sprunki because I mean I imagine that this is probably like the big like newest like brain rot thing, but it still feels really odd to have all of this content off of this one character or this one cast of characters, I guess. And so just sort of like looking at all of these like different videos and all this different content like created by all these creators all sort of like combined into one, it just felt really odd. And speaking of odd, these aren't even like the weirdest like videos I saw while like researching this video, which sounds sort of odd, but um I also saw these two channels called 8-Bit Games and Feeful. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but oh yeah, and also just quick warning about this one. But both of them seem to show sort of like fetish esque content, and I do understand that like with the Feeful channel, it did feature like poop and fart humor, and I suppose that could be sort of, they could show that it's like more geared towards children because that's more childish humor, I suppose. But it just felt really weird to have all this like sexual content combined with all this poop content, and it's not even just with like 8-Bit Games. 8-Bit Games had all of this what it felt like inflation and like fart like fetish stuff, and it just felt really odd to have two separate channels sort of go after these like sexual like brain rot content in ways that just felt really off-putting. Like, because I understand that kids may find like farts and poop funny and stuff, but just sort of like pushing it in this specific way, where it's sort of like sexualizing like fart and poop content, it just felt like really off-putting. And it just didn't like it didn't feel right to have like all these kids watching all this like really weird stuff. And I do want to say that like all this brain rot content, it hasn't always been this sort of like sexualized and stuff and like weird like fetish esque content. And I feel like a really good example of this is this channel called Quiz Monsters. And so basically this channel, it began out with like just sort of like like the casual like brain rot like Roblox doors and stuff, and like just like a couple months ago. But then it sort of gradually got more and more sexualized until now it's basically just feeding off of just sort of like views off of the sort of sexual content that it's selling and stuff. And it just sort of shows like how like brain rot hasn't always been like the best thing for kids, but it's getting like more and more sexualized, like even over the course of just like 4 months that Quiz Monsters has been uploading videos. And then I also like while looking for this or through these like videos, I also saw this other content creator, Linecraft, and I don't necessarily enjoy the content due to the brain rot, but I felt like their drawing abilities were very interesting. But then I also noticed that there were sort of like just like the other ones that are more like sexualized sort of videos, and within like the sort of midst of all these like creatives or sort of like drawings and stuff. And then I sort of realized that they tried to do it like a couple of times, but then they just continued with like just the normal drawing stuff. And it did seem sort of odd to just sort of have, just some like normal like drawing content and just some like more sexual stuff, just like in the midst of it all. But then I sort of realized that all of like the sort of more sexual videos weren't as popular as their drawing videos. And what that might not sound like much, but it showed that these sexual videos are only like getting more views because these kids are like watching this content, and it's showing that it's showing to the content creators when they get these like really highly viewed videos that are more like sexual and stuff. It shows them that this sort of content is like the most selling content and stuff, and that's probably like the main reason why I like the channels such as like Bunny Tunes, like that's likely some sort of content farm stuff, and it shows why they're like producing so much of this like brain rot sexual stuff is because these kids are just watching so much of it and like promoting it, and it just feels really off to have all these kids just sort of marketed this basically just brain rot porn, and they're just watching so much of it. It's I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. And especially when you see like content creators like Linecraft, where they actually have like genuine talent, but they like try to like go towards the market that they see kids going into, and it just doesn't succeed. And so it just feels really off looking at all these content creators succeed off of more like sexual content geared towards kids, while like content creators like Minecraft with actual talent, I guess, try to do similar stuff and just sort of fail. And I mean, I don't entirely like promote Minecraft due to this sort of more like brain rot stuff and their attempts at like sexual brain rot stuff, but I still find that they would probably be, I don't know, they just feel like a better, more suited like person to sort of be more successful than all these like other like content farms that are basically just mass producing all this like brain rot sex stuff. And I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. As well, this sort of like brain rot stuff is like different from ones from like years ago. Like if you look back in like 2015 or like 2017 or whatnot, like there is brain rot content, but it's not as like sexualized as it is now. Like you could see like just like all these like crazy like brain rot and like flashy characters and stuff, but it's just different, and it feels odd to sort of promote this more sexualized stuff to younger audience through the use of things that have been like on YouTube for a while now, like content farms and all these sort of like flashy characters. I mean, it's just I'm mainly talking about it in this video because it just feels like it's going past a point of like over-sexualization, in which these like younger kids, like 5 and like 6 year olds, are watching this like pretty sexualized content. Like it could be worse, but it's still fairly sexualized, and it's probably gonna harm them pretty decently, like at least mentally, because I mean, sure, the brain rot's not the best, but when you see sexualized like cartoon things at a younger age, you're gonna get sort of more desensitized to that sort of like sexual content, and then you're just gonna sort of like, I don't know, things are just gonna like down spiral. Like brain rot's not the best, but when it gets more like sexualized and stuff, it just seems to make things worse. And I know that we haven't directly seen like the future, I suppose, but I just worry for these like younger kids that are watching this like Sprunki porn stuff, and just sort of like their future lives are just gonna be like just sort of like messed up by the over sexualization of content that they're watching. And yeah. Also, I want to say that it's not even just like sexualized content. Like there is also some like more like gory-ish content, I suppose, on the platform. Like this one video that I saw called "Ding Dong Pregnant SpongeBob," which already sounds like really odd, but when actually clicking on the video, it's basically just a video of like SpongeBob like giving birth and stuff. But then at the end, it spends like a couple of seconds of just like SpongeBob like screaming sort of just as this like gore just sort of like spills out and stuff, and it's all AI generated images, so you don't actually like see as much, but you still see like the gore of SpongeBob. And now this also brings up sort of I guess sort of a good thing about brain rot and sort of like shortening attention spans of younger children is that they can't really like watch as much longer stuff, and so like the sort of like horror of like just sort of like the past like decades and or the most recent decades, like the maze and ghost car and stuff, where it takes a while to sort of just sort of like get calmed down, and then it does like the jump scare. Well, I don't know. I just don't feel like these like younger like Gen Alpha kids are really able to experience that as much due to this sort of like the more like desensitizing content that are just sort of like scrolling up and just like all this stuff. And so I do suppose that they're probably not going to get into as much bad stuff, but they're still watching this more like sexualized and like gory, like pregnant SpongeBob, and it just doesn't seem right to have these kids overly like stimulated by this like sexualized content, especially because like it is overstimulation. Like in the past, if there was like child sexualized content, it would likely be like more like slowed down, but now that these kids are like don't have as long of an attention span and stuff, it's just sort of like it allows for these content farms to sort of create a whole bunch of like just like really weird like sexualized content like really fast, and just like put it at like the beginning and make like a thumbnail. And I do understand that probably not all of this all of these like brain rot content farms are like sexual, but there's still like a lot of like sexual content within like these brain rot things, and it doesn't seem right to like overstimulate children with this more sexualized content. Okay, now it's time for the closing statements, I guess. Is I don't really have much else to say, but I mean, like I understand that brain rot is just sort of like the new, just sort of like generational fear, and that people are just worrying for Gen Alpha because it's something new and like AI and stuff. But I still feel like the over sexualization of this brain rot content just shouldn't be as geared towards these younger children as it is now. And I don't entirely know like a better way to like make content farms, or if we even really like should have this like brain rot content farm stuff. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, please do like and subscribe, and I don't know if you like this sort of like content, I can create some more. But this video is like mainly just sort of to talk about the over sexualization of this sort of content. And I mean, I found like a lot of other channels that have more like odd stuff. These are just like the main ones that I wanted to talk about to just sort of prove some points about brain rot content. Yeah. Well, thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll see y'all later. Bye.